Good evening. Welcome. I'm John. I'm the event director at Literati Bookstore. We're pleased to welcome Adam Choi Wild in support of their collection Cut to Bloom, and our special guests this evening, Adam Falkner, Rachel Eliza Griffiths, and Jon Sands. You heard me as you zoomed in, but just a reminder of our Zoom etiquette. You're muted. You'll remain muted. Speaker view is probably going to be the ideal viewing experience. That way you'll just see who's currently reading or talking on your screen. And the chat is closed as well, but you can keep the chat open because I will be in there periodically to send links where you can purchase books from Autumn and all of our readers this evening. So you might want to have your chat window open for that, even if you're in speaker view. As a reminder, you can purchase Cut to Bloom and additional books by our poets this evening at literatibookstore.com. And you can also shop for more books there as well. Thousands of titles are available for curbside pickup if you live in Southeast Michigan. In lieu of a book purchase, we'd also ask that you consider a $5 donation to sustain our virtual programming. So whether you'd like to think of that as a subscription for this week's events, or for events in the month of September, or for all of our events remaining virtually this year, you can donate at literatibookstore.com/donation. I almost forgot the website. Otherwise, we simply thank you for joining us this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, depending on wherever in the world you're tuning in from currently. So I'm going to introduce our readers this evening in the reverse order of which they will read, ending with Jon Sands, who will be reading first. So Adam Choi Wild is a queer Korean-American poet who grew up in the slam community of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and went on to perform across the country, including at Brave New Voices, the New York City Poetry Festival, and Asheville WordFest. Autumn is a Kundiman Fellow with an MFA in poetry from Sarah Lawrence, and was a finalist for the Jake Adam York Prize in 2019. Their debut collection of poetry, Cut to Bloom, was the 2019 winner of the Write Bloody Book Contest, and their work has been anthologized in Daring to Repair by Wising Up Press and the Queer Movement Anthology of Literature, and appears in Barrow Street, the Massachusetts Review, Split This Rock, Bog Lifter, Lantern Review, Friction, and other publications. They work as the director of the Progressive Teaching Institute and as a diversity coordinator at a school in New York City. Dr. Adam Faulkner is a poet, educator, and arts and culture strategist. He is the author of Adoption and the Willies, and his work has appeared in a range of print and media spaces, including on programming for HBO, NBC, NPR, BET, in the New York Times, and elsewhere. Former high school English teacher in New York City's public schools, Adam is the founder and executive director of the pioneering diversity consulting initiative, the Dialogue Arts Project, and special projects director for Urban Word NYC. Rachel Eliza Griffiths is the author of 4 previous collections of poetry, including Lighting the Shadow. Her literary and visual work has appeared in the New Yorker, the New York Times, Paris Review, and many other publications. She lives in New York City. And reading first, Jon Sands is a winner of the 2018 National Poetry Series, selected for his second book, It's Not Magic. Since March, he's been hosting an interview series on Instagram Live called P's and Q's. His work has been featured in the New York Times, as well as anthologized in the Best American Poetry. He teaches at Brooklyn College, Urban Word NYC, and for over a decade has facilitated a weekly writing workshop for adults at Bailey House, an HIV/AIDS service center in East Harlem. Tours extensively as a poet, but he lives in Brooklyn. Please join me in using your Zoom claps or hearts or party explosions to welcome all of our poets to your living rooms this evening.
Yay! I feel like that's how it probably sounds where you're coming from. Yay! Yay is certainly how I feel to be in this intimate virtual room. As we were discussing when you all were in the waiting room, I have my intimate desk light on for tonight, but I'm so excited to be here celebrating my dear friend Adam Choi Wild and their collection Cut to Bloom. I'm so excited to be here with Adam and Rachel Eliza Griffiths. I don't really see how we could get started on any events in kind of the world where we're meeting right now without just naming what it is that we're meeting in the context of a global pandemic that sits atop like an Instagram filter, all of the other inequities that our country is founded on, a generational, historical, foundational struggle for racial justice right now that is occurring in real life right outside our windows. I just want to name those things before we go. I want to bring that in the space and say that I'm grateful to be with you all on nights like this, and I'm grateful to be with you all on nights not like this. And so I'm going to read a few poems. I'm going to read 3 poems, and then I'm very excited to throw the mic, sit back, and just enjoy. So I am going to read a couple poems that are like spanking new, okay? Brand new. And so I hope you'll grade me on a curve. Goes like this. You don't know anything about red lights and open intersections. You don't have a baby in the back seat facing backwards and a back left window that won't roll up with the driver control buttons. So you have to reach your arm back and to the left while the person you love most in the world screams, red light, and you can't jam the brakes because the car itself is in your head, clown, with your big fucking pancake feet and scary oversized facial expressions and your bright red nose, which is really the earth at this particular moment when seen from above with an accurate telescope, churning and burning on fire. And you can see my little Nissan back down there next to my brother who's not calling back and who I'm not answering, next to the red beach ball inside my cranium that sizzles and pops, and you don't know how long I can hold my breath under the surface of burning water. You don't know how to walk away from a friend forever, not look back and not accept anything but a written apology. You wouldn't know the first thing about my bed, loser. So enough braying, enough stumbling across my toes, enough letting me scapegoat you, scape loser. I left Cincinnati and don't know the way back. I left a trail of breadcrumbs, but I ate them. You're no clock. You're the father of no one. You didn't even look in that intersection. You're the bumpy sound that brakes make when you jam them for real at 45 miles per hour. You're me, dummy, and everything you love is in that car. Everything you judge is in that brain, while your left hand reaches back to roll up the back left window and your wife screams, red light, red light, red light, John, red light, red light, red light that you have stopped at 300 times before. So where are you, imposter, and how do you get home? I can hear it. I can hear you. Trust me. There are so many different ways to hear. So thank you for being here. I'm going to read you another poem. And when I say new, I mean that I wrote this poem yesterday. Okay. It is possible to edit a draft out of ever becoming a draft. It's possible to cut yourself from a team you're too afraid to try out for. It's possible too, small as you are, to forfeit an entire season without realizing there's even a game. You could die right now and no one would stop you because your inner monologue doesn't scroll on the bottom of even one screen. You could ask yourself if you're having a good time right out of having a good time. You could. Your brain could be a ticker tape parade of your worst approximation of other people's voices. It happens every day. It might even be probable to believe that not knowing the future is a bad thing. You could edit yourself under your own covers and then cover those covers with iron covers. You could carve out the smallest space under any old rock, then decorate it. You could live alone under that rock if you wanted to. You could be an unfinished first line. It happens literally every day. You can become your fears. Look, even at your mangled little toes, bruised and blistered, you could be that small if you wanted. Is that what you want? So that's poem number 2. And in the I don't know, I guess the name of not living under rocks, I will just offer that I've gotten recently into the very mystical art of phone banking. Really took the dive a few months ago. And I'll just say, if you're here and that's something that you wanted to do and it just seems like, how does that even happen? I've been doing it on behalf of local state Senate candidates in Pennsylvania and on behalf of AOC. And if you want more information about that, or as I just signed up today to be a poll supervisor in Pennsylvania, which it seems like we're gonna need every little bit that we can from wherever you're tuning in from, Michigan for sure, and you want a little help, I just put my email in the chat and you should definitely hit me up because I'd be happy to chat with you about any of those things and get you any information that you might need. So the last poem I'm going to read is this poem from my book, It's Not Magic, which is only available at Literati, strangely, if you've bought Autumn's book. Then it kind of like unlocks it like a cheat code. So this is one of the last poems in the book. I'm not gonna intro it. I threw my hands from my wrists because I liked the way the beat sniffed around the speakers like a dog searching for the right place to shit. My butt was against my blue jeans, against the ripped leather of some couch, listening to some beautiful poet profess what they dreamt about once, because we are scared to write out the new dreams because they are happening right now. Which is a good time to tell you that I am not alone. I am next to one hot cup of soup. She could melt the wax off the wick if you catch my baseball. I don't know her. It's just two people, one couch, and a bundle of old dreams. But I cross my left leg in her direction like a knight if the couch were a chessboard. And in my newest dream, I think I see her see me. I think I see her adjust her butt against her pants, against the leather right now, which is a good time to tell you that my heart has not been working right. It's a cold bowl of wax. It could freeze the juice off a mango. I have been carrying this pistachio in my ribs for months. I have been trusting people only when I write about them. I have been straight to voicemail. I have been sewing a dress from all of these books and wearing it to my one-man prom. And I don't know what her hair smells like, but I want to. I don't know what her mother's name is, but I want to send her an email questionnaire. I want to reach my arm to the right now, which is a good time to tell you that she is actually two ladies, and only one I got an email from that said she'd only met me, but she knew me. She only knew me, but she loved me. I said, I don't believe in magic outside of my poems. I said, you can't love me. All I did was write a book. And she still wrote back. One, I liked the comment that she made on someone else's Facebook status. And it isn't the one right here, but my elbows heard the beat, ride out the speakers on horseback. My shoulders got yanked by some invisible lasso. I am talking to the air with my entire body. And if I was waiting for the perfect time to say, how do you do? For an invitation to a dinner party, for a flow chart to say trust is a risk like poetry, for a sign to spark in the back of all these old dreams that said, John, let it ride. I am already 30, old enough to know one day my heart will shut down altogether. and I get to choose for what. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It is my truly distinct honor to bring up the author of another one of just my favorite books that has come out. We'll call it in the last 5 years. Sometimes an author really just does the world a favor and pops the hood on something that is clearly so deeply like craft exquisite, like crafted with such care, but also with such, like this is a part of me is in this book, and you can know that a part of the author is in the book. And I'm just so grateful whenever I get the chance to read a collection like that. And so I'm so excited to introduce one of my heroes, one of the best writers and photographers that we have, the author of Seeing the Body. Everybody, let's give our nice round of applause to Rachel Eliza Griffiths.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Oh my goodness. It's like, I'm so glad to celebrate and with these two, it's like a family reunion right now. And I'm feeling like the OG sitting on the porch with like, some sweet brown liquor or something, but I'm feeling really, really happy. And as Jon opened this space with all of the things that we are holding inside of us and beyond us, I'm holding those things too. And one of the things I feel very fortunate to hold tonight, and since I met you, is your specialness. Thank you to Literati. Mad love to bookstores right now. Buy everything, support bookstores, support Literati. But I just want to say that I never take a space, even if it's virtual, for granted, where I get to hear some of my most favorite poets and to like be in this journey with you. This is such a special moment. It's like a moment, things happen and they happen and they happen, but this right now being present feels so gorgeous to me. And so with these other two beloveds and everyone who is holding space with us to come and celebrate you, I just say thank you. I'm gonna hit it and quit it, as they say. I'm gonna read from my new book, Seeing the Body. Aram and I are lucky we get to put our books out during a pandemic, so we get to hold that together. And we'll talk about that years from now and be like, remember that? And we'll be like, So I'm gonna start off reading this poem called Comedy. And I want to celebrate tonight, but I also want to say that this particular reading tonight on this particular day is in memory of my Aunt Stephanie, who died about a week and a half ago from a heart attack, and I miss her. And so I'm reading for her and my two uncles that I've also lost during this pandemic. Comedy. I am here before the nurse brings my mother breakfast. I study her body, try to remember if I caught my mother in the dream I had the night before, where the hem of her gown flew through a tunnel, a silver tunnel without end. Her skin went right through my hands whenever I was close enough to save her. She slipped through her name I could not stop calling, until I sat up alone in my crib. Embarrassed, she tells me she remembers how she phoned me last night to let me know she was in the morgue. She laughs as the nurse, whose feet squeak and Minnie Mouse Crocs, arrives with tea. We watch the nurse with eyes that will never remember her face, thank her for the toast that is thicker than my mother's hand. That morphine is some powerful shit, my mother says. I agree with her, as though she has merely mentioned it is cold outside, though I have rarely had morphine and have never made courtesy calls from a morgue. It was late, and I didn't know where I was, she says, because that wasn't death, which means I couldn't have called you from that place. This is my new mother, who has finally admitted fear into the raw ward of her heart. This is my mother who flew away from my grasp in the tunnel without end. The woman who could not wait for me to grab the white edge of where she was going. I was afraid, she says, looking over the rim of her plastic cup. My mother shakes the world, chipped ice between us. Yeah, don't go and write about me like that, she says. I already know you will. So my mama's birthday was on Monday, actually. And I played a lot of Stevie Wonder. And I'm like segueing that a little bit into my beautiful memories of the gorgeous Adam Faulkner, who I was fortunate enough to photograph. I'm gonna say some more radiant things about your radiance. But whenever I hear Stevie, I see you dancing in all your beauty and just fineness. You're just fine, so all that. This poem, I think what I wanna read now is an Ars Poetica. And I feel like years and years ago, Arhm and I were at Sarah Lawrence, and we were sitting at this table, and I was supposed to be like the teacher, and I kind of was, but then I was also the student because I was learning so much in that space. And so I always felt that I saw you as collaborator and comrade, and this heart, this fierce heart that you have. And so it's so great to celebrate someone so amazing and wonderful. And even though it's weird, it's like all these different journeys, I was so happy when you reached out to me. It was like a wish that like my net had thrown like years and years ago, and that to know that you're thriving and doing your work and being about that business, I'm just big up. So this is Ars Poetica, and all I need to tell you is a medical thing, which is that during my mother's life, she had kidney failure, renal failure. She didn't do normal dialysis. She did a thing called peritoneal dialysis. And so you'll hear me mention that. And then I think the other thing you may need to know is that when I was coming up back in the day now, there were these little like drinks. They were like little barrels and they were plastic and they were basically just sugar water, but they were called Huggies. So you'll hear me mention those. Ars Poetica. In the evenings, we watched Jeopardy, wore surgical masks once she got sick. Before that, my mother often sent me to the store for cigarettes, packs of Salem Lights. Take somebody with you, she'd tell me. But I didn't listen, only wanted to get back to the book on my lap, didn't want to share the change with my siblings so I could buy chips, grape now-a-laters, and red Huggy barrels for myself. We microwaved fluid in clear bags for her exchanges. That's what the word meant when my mother connected the plastic tube from her stomach to a piss-colored sack of peritoneal fluid. Normal dialysis was too much. Before all that, my mother smoked. We would drive late to liquor stores for boxed wine, 6 packs. Then she got on the phone with her friends, kept her feet up on an open oven to stay warm, laughed the laughs she needed to help her get by, get up the next day, and mother us all over again. At night, she did what she wanted, cursed so sublimely I learned to hear it as poetry, unless I was the beloved of her ode. Before she got sick, around the age I am now, she wore her hair short, dyed a color I can only describe as fuck you red. She'd smoke, wearing her pearls, ask me about school and what did I want to be, because she figured it likely cost her a lot of money. Sometimes she'd say, Rachel Face, I need you to go to the store I'd put down my book or the knife on the cutting board. I'd walk alone in ugly jeans and Coke bottle glasses to Concord Deli, thinking about whether I could be a writer someday, if I would ever learn to smoke, curse, and two-step against a hot stove while my children grew up like books or strangers under my own roof. What would it cost me to make up true stories? How much would I have to save of my life to pay my own way? When my neighbor said, "Hey, beautiful," I was thinking of how to get out of doing the dishes. Besides, I didn't reply because I wasn't beautiful. But his friend braked hard, barking like a dog while he jumped from the car and ran over our shadows on the sidewalk. "Hey, bitch," he said, and flicked his cigarette down where we were both dark as asphalt. The memory shivered in the skillet the way the onions did. When I came back into the kitchen with my mother's cigarettes, put the book away, and picked up the knife. And then I'd like to end with a short poem of gratitude that I'm reading especially for all mi gente tonight. So this is Chosen Family. This is like a B-side from What's in Seeing the Body. So it's a little bit different. Chosen family. When you find your people, you'll still look over your shoulder sometimes to see your old loneliness. You're hoping other people you don't even know will follow your smile. When you find your people, they won't ask you where you came from. Your people will be busy putting good food on your plate and asking you if you're hungry or broke. When you find your family, they'll throw their star to you, offer you their love, their singing. They'll dance toward your sadness, saying, "You need to shine with us, whether or not you love your own light." They'll say, "We love your black skin and drag and fat and natural hair. We love your queer, so please just live. And don't let anybody kill you or tell you that they've killed you and you're just fine the dead way you are. When you find your people, don't leave them and don't let them off the hook when they are in the wrong. When they are trying to take themselves out of this world, lay your hands on them and call them yours and yours and yours. When you touch, when you see your kin smiling into your eyes, the soft or rough flags of their hands covering yours in a truth so true and fierce, you see you all have been in midair for some time and could go higher and burn some shit up. If you remember, always remember what else is good, what else but love to love us back everywhere and everywhere we look. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now it is my most sublime, divine, righteous, gorgeous, delicious pleasure to welcome this next poet being, God, to the living room where we are celebrating. And I could go on and on and on. Literati has given the accolades. I'm adding love. This is probably the person, if you could ever photograph anyone and feel like we did that and like drop 10 mics at once and tell like GQ, Esquire, Vogue to like catch up with the shit, this is that one right here. So it is with such delight, pleasure, gratitude for just the humanness, the kindness, which I never take for granted, even amongst poets. The earth you sing, the earth you are, I give thanks. And it's all you. Mwah, thank you, Adam Faulkner.
Rachel, Eliza, I love you. Thank you for that. I love you so much. I also, there's a part of me that wishes I could like turn my video off and have a headshot from that session pop up, but for whatever reason, Zoom feels it necessary to like update every 3 weeks. So they change it up on you. Thank you, Jon, and thank you, Rachel, Eliza, for bringing such grounding into the space. Thank you, Literati, for having us, hosting us. You're near and dear to my Ann Arbor heart for so many different reasons. And Autumn, I'm so delighted to be here and to shout your name into the clouds and to raise this book up. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. I also feel really lucky to be reading alongside Jon and Rachel, Eliza, and you, and in this order, because the poems or the pieces that I'm sort of thinking about are just sort of being pulled gently and responsively from what I'm hearing, and I'm gonna jump right in, and I feel really, really, really lucky to be here tonight. Yeah, I'm thinking about a lot of the same things. It sounds like we all are. The world is a literal burning dumpster fire, and it's poets that go to work. It's poets that go to work. It's poets that go to work. One of the many things that I am kindred to Autumn in is their commitment to education and their commitment to young people. And it is my life's work. It is my life's blood. And when I think about bookstores and the role that bookstores play, it could not be overstated how important they are. At the same time, books are sparks. Books are like invitations. And they are not spaces to read a book and self-congratulate ourselves for having done that thing or crossed that line. And I've been thinking a lot about how books and book clubs are being picked up right now in the name of, I read a thing, checked a box, and now I'm done, at a moment when we're obviously calling out for so much more. So Autumn, this is in the lineage of how I see you rabble-rousing and starting small fires everywhere you go in the spaces you work and teach. This poem is called "A Book Club is a Comfy Place to Weep." White fragility is white fragility. Now there's a thought. There's an original notion. There is a mirror-walled room raised for my reluctant people to consider ourselves, to name the considering the work itself. A book club is a comfy place to weep. A dialogue is a silent thing to own. A donation, a water wing to float above it all in, I'm afraid to say, I think we're stuck. The kiki is not where the shame is. The work is not a turn and talk, a share about a time when. I am saying to you, take a step forward if you've ever owned slaves. Trick question, you have. Trick answer, so have I. Trick answer, 40 acres and free college is the turnstile, the ticket to ride, to shake the sleeping self. It is not a parade. Take a step forward and please say it plain. It is me. It is me who comes for me. I'm going to read something now that felt very kindred to some of the choices, Rachel, Eliza, that you were bringing into the space, both perhaps in feeling this electric energy to bring Stevie into the room, as I often do, as you know, but also trying to think carefully about this notion of chosen family and who I have the luxury of being on this Zoom room with. So I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay, just a few paragraphs, that is a meditation on like touch in this very strange moment, and how I think queer people or folks who are forced to live at sort of like the intersections and constantly recreating and reimagining what is possible are more prepared for this clusterfuck of a moment than anyone else. And I also see Autumn, your lineage writing in that direction. I first found touch in a barber shop in Michigan. between the spray and chaos and chatter of other men. And I mean this less in the sense of an introduction and more of an education. The way my mother says she never heard music until she encountered Stevie Wonder. Or my friend Alex says he had never eaten food until he went to Rome. When something grabs us in such a profound way, it startles us into ourselves. It raises the bar for how we wish to live, and if we're lucky, it shows us who we are before we are even prepared to find out. But whatever the case, I found it first in the tug and pull and intimacy of another man's hands, which, despite the blades they carried, pulled tenderness right out of me. Among the many gifts that I think queer kids inherit, few are more profound than the capacity to improvise, to waltz through our daily lives with the sensation that what we desire and how we desire it is best kept hidden from view. We pay attention to the private encounters that nudge us toward erotic communion without the danger of sex. And years before we'll come out, before I'd let my body receive and pursue the kind of touch it craved, I thieved it in a barber's hands, the soft scrape of his clipping guard against my scalp, one careful shape up at a time. As we lurch toward month 5, 6, 7 in a global pandemic, physical touch is all but forbidden. The intimacies that we're depriving ourselves daily are far graver than the luxury of a simple haircut. And still, as unprecedented as this moment is, I feel an eerie familiarity, a preparedness almost. I recognize the challenge of improvising affection. Behind the layers of cloth masks, I nod and say thank you and good morning to strangers. In an ocean current of bike protesters, I sweat and pump my legs into rubber and shout the names of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Tony McDade and Layleen Polanco and Rayshard Brooks in concert, in chorus, in rageful communion. And in the park, after rainfall, I place my sneakers in the footprints of other runners. I hold doors with my elbows in the same spot that another's have been. And who knows what any good of this does? For none of these tiny thieveries are ever sufficient. But they do remind me of the hunger that has made us who we are. They remind me that I possess the tenderness and fierceness to find new ways to show strangers I love them, to follow and study and listen and mind the small healing gestures, to help us love us through and to make ourselves again. So this last joint that I'm going to read is Autumn, also in service of sort of how I feel and see your work. And I don't mean the job, right? There's the job and there's the work. And the work you do in the world is challenging people to be more courageous versions of themselves, more courageous actors in their own lives. And the legacies that we both share, right, in terms of trying to sort of investigate who we are, and the common mentors we share that have taught us that like self-investigation is the only tool, right? I'm working on a collection right now, a new set of pieces that are sort of a hybrid lyric joint. And they're really interrogating masculinity, and they're interrogating the cost of silence for men, but in a way that isn't attempting to make the feminine the sort of like desired target or the fallout of the lack of self-interrogation, right? Men hurt other men constantly because of our lack of capacity. So this is the last piece I'm going to read, and it is sort of describing a space that I see you working and plotting and writing into, Autumn, and it's a space that I see you challenging young people to get to every single day. And like Rachel Eliza said, yeah, I believe in your work, and yeah, I believe in your book, but I also believe that your humanity is just so fucking intact. And every room you walk in, and every bookstore you drop tomes in is richer because you are in it. So this joint is called Truth or Dare is Truth or Dare is funny because honestly, who picks truth? Truth or Dare is funny because honestly, who picks truth? Like, really, is that even a thing? When you are 13 at the swimming pool or in the backseat of Kyle's Jeep or in the woods behind your middle school with the group of curious kids and your heart is racing, who in those moments is like, I challenge you to speak your truth? I, insert name, formally acknowledge that I am petrified of putting my mouth on another person and in fact have become so preoccupied with not doing sex right that it is borderline paralyzing. Also, my dad drinks too much and I'm a homosexual. No, that is not how this game works. But what if it was? I'm saying, what if the gauntlet that we have to walk through on our path through the wonder years isn't some thicket of silent swinging boy blades or taunts or dares? What if it's this quiet open field with an outrageous Midwestern sky that stretches blue for miles and miles and miles, and the only way to get there is by saying, I am scared, or I am sorry, I am wrong, or I made a mistake, or I'm feeling a little bit alone. And this is just a thought experiment here, so stay with me. But I'm saying, what happens if the only muscle we ever build is that one? What type of place is that? The type of place that is the kind of space that Adam Wild Choi is working toward creating and curating every single day of their lives. Autumn, we've said enough about you for everybody in this room to know the litany of reasons they should be raising you up and buying that book. Thank you, Jon Sands. Lift It Up. And also buying everybody here's book because Literati needs your money more than Amazon. But there we go. Look, see, Jon Sands, right on time, baby. Love you. Please put wherever you are, whatever Zoom room you're in, stand up, make a noise, snap a finger, put your hands together for the one, the only, our beloved Autumn Wild Choi.
What's up, everybody? Thank you all so much. I am just so moved and honored to be reading with these poets I've studied and read and taught for so many years. To be lifted up by you all, especially in such a time, means so much. This is really odd to be reading poetry on Zoom, but I'm going to take the joy of this evening to help buoy me up for a really, really long time. So thank you to Rachel, Eliza. Thank you to Jon. Thank you to Adam. It's just such a joy and honor to be here with you all. Thank you to Literati. Thank you to all of our audience members here tonight. I love this cozy little space we have, which very much fits Jon's mood lighting that he set up for us tonight. Yeah, hi. So I wanted to start my set with a poem that hopes to speak to and through silence, a theme that I write about a lot. It feels especially salient now in this era of multiple pandemics in what I hope is a sustained rise in consciousness, right? As the realities of systemic racism and bias makes themselves abundantly clear. I really hope that we're still talking in the same way in November, December, right? But I think we're really fighting against that. We have all inherited to some degree a sense of helplessness, the need to silence and soothe. And I hope that by naming it, we can start to claim choice and possibility instead. This poem is called Inheritance. If I speak now, I deny generations of mouths politely closed or pummeled smooth, hiding folds of cash until bruises crowd and we finally say enough. In our family, I'm the first American. What choice is there but to grunt and pry at what has been slammed closed, to love open like sunflowers following the sun, trusting to be fed, not burned. To be the first means to salvage. What choice is there but to peel off the flies caught on my sticky tongue? So when I was working on this book, I really struggled with, thank you all, with why I was calling up stories of violence, and why I wanted these stories to be what I shared with the world. And ultimately, I came to believe that naming this violence is a part of gaining power and agency over it. To be able to choose the way that impacts my life and changes me. And I hope too that by sharing these stories, I can join the collective effort to help us feel more liberated to talk about abuse and misogyny, which in the speaking up itself is a crucial step to interrupting these patterns of violence. This poem is called Fool Me Once. His knees buckle in a drunk pigeon walk, knocking chairs around, catching himself loudly on the table. Mom hides in side room, nursing baby sister, though her breasts have seized. I tried to lock the door faster, but he's inside, pulling us down the hall, saying only terrible daughters aren't happy to see their dad. He holds our shoulders tight. We make our faces pebbles that fervent thumbs rub smooth. Call the cops again, and I'll kill you. I dial the phone while I pretend to pee. We hid one in the blanket closet just for nights like this. He leaves before the cops come, the river of him slashing sideways, mama in side room, baby still hungry, Mo and I sucking back into our mouths the air we let him take. It's funny because I'm reading this and remembering working on these poems in Rachel Eliza's workshop at Sarah Lawrence, which feels like a strange kind of synchronicity. All right. Fear changes the taste of breast milk like an animal's violent slaughter spoils its meat. And shout out to Annie Robertson for helping me with that title. The day after, the chairs are back in place, the handprints on the table and our faces wiped clean. Still, baby protests, doesn't take mom's breasts, though she pleads, then prays, then pumps to try the bottle. Mo and I are 13 and 10, young enough to make a game of survival. We take a bottle each and mimic for baby how to feed, get to be heroes when she giggles, reaches for milk of her own. We dart our eyes to mom to see if it's our turn to be held. The last bruise. Whenever my mother takes the stairs, I remember how he pushed her down. Arms abandoning her face to circle her pregnant belly, cracking like a watermelon at my feet. 3 months later, mom moves us home from the shelter, restraining order circling like an electric fence, my newest job to translate the welfare stamps and mix the formula, while Amma sells Tupperware, then knives, tries hosting wealthy students from Korea. She watches their plates for leftover chicken or rice, never sitting down for a meal, choosing instead the certainty of hunger, to be a woman unowned. So when examining the violence my family survived, I felt compelled to look at the stage of violence that was set before we were even born, and I started researching the Korean War. It is something that has deeply impacted my mother's generation and therefore our generation. It is something that's never taught or talked about in school and official curriculum, which in itself feels very much like an extension of colonialism and white supremacy. There's a couple of footnotes that I'll just read out loud before I jump into the poem. 1, the Korean War is often referred to as the forgotten war because of its absence from US public attention. 2, Japan colonized Korea for 35 years before the Korean War, forcing everyone to take on Japanese names and speak only in Japanese. Secretary Taft sanctioned this occupation as long as Japan agreed the US could continue to control the Philippines. 3, Hundreds of thousands of women were forced into sexual servitude by the Japanese military until the end of World War II. American military personnel continued to visit these comfort stations until they were closed in 1946. The Forgotten War. 1. My grandfather was a soldier in a war where only white men could be heroes and my people, the herd, to be saved. 3 million Korean civilians killed, pocketed like coins for democracy, wishes to say he was born a pawn, born to forget who pulled the trigger. 2. Grandmother never talks about her childhood and hoards everything. Cabinets of ketchup and Spam, reused toilet paper drying on the sink's edge, teaching us to pick up each grain of rice, eyeing the outskirts of her plates, never talking about the Korean pride out like teeth, born to forget the name her mother called her, foraging instead for words like hunger and please. 3. What is a plea? In the language of men collecting 500,000 comfort women, many only 12, most dying from multiple STDs. What does a person deserve after years of days like that? Surely more than the dollar, the few hundred out of thousands of comfort women to remain received as reparations. 4. The word Han in Korean means to celebrate your survival in silence, knowing you weren't the only one to pay the price. Means seeing there was less than a grain of rice and still setting the table. Means that when they steal your shovel, use your hands and plant the garden anyways. 5. It took my aunt years to divorce her abusive husband, choosing a bruised neck over an empty mouth. She now works at a 7-Eleven, borrows money from my mom for her daughter's wedding, tries to still her voice into a frozen lake when she calls. Her choice to leave her husband, the same as leaving the church. This single mother is being outcast in Korea, which is to say being a woman is the loneliest thing if you're trying to survive. 6. My mother, in trying to survive, made us speak English at home, knowing we wouldn't be able to defend the family in our mother tongue. She says the word Han is my birthright, something every Korean owns. But who am I to define this prized ruin, this fertile ash, far from fluent, saying thank you like a foreigner, craving to fit into the language of home and memory, split from the homeland we wouldn't have survived, queer and single-mothered, split from holding each other's words in our mouths like our own, missing what was never ours. Yet I am this fool, coming to praise, if not love, the fracture, knowing it has allowed us to choose, if not forget. And my mother can be more than a survivor, and it can be more than a child who is trained to never ask for more. There's something incredibly fitting about reading this these poems, knowing that Jon and Adam have helped me so much edit them and look at them and work on their 50 million drafts of themselves, and to know that a lot of these poems started at my time at Sir Lawrence and Rachel Eliza's class. And yeah, I'm gonna close out my set with one of the last poems in this book, and just I want to say again how grateful I am to you all for joining us, to Literati, to all these fabulous readers. You really are my sheroes and heroes. Please check out their books, which can all be found on the Literati website, and most definitely please look out for other stops on Rachel Eliza's book tour. I have a new book, Seeing the Body. Jon and I were talking earlier about how we've just been teaching her poem Chosen Family to like probably literally every workshop I've taught since it came out. So please do yourselves a favor. And it is just so wonderful to connect and be in community with you all. And this last poem is My Collective Hope, that we can all have more access to a fuller slate of choice and agency, and become more than what was passed on to us. And I know that with a community like this, we are one step closer to do that. So much love to you all. This poem is called Ode to Unlearning. When a picture is all you have, you remember the way your father held you easy like sunlight in a window or water in a cup. The sides of his hair short, just like you in the mirror now. Surprised to see his face after all these years. The biggest insult Amma threw at you, right after the cop lights, the shelter, the divorce, was to say you were just like your appa, leaving your socks around the house like an untrained dog, unsure of what to claim, so claiming everything. When I first called my father-in-law Dad, I'd rehearsed it a million times, wanting to sound casual enough everyone would know I was ready, the word finally untied from bruise and ache and if only, and brandishing it now like a key to the room where father means a stiff drink but not a stiff hand, a hug that is tender but not an apology, a man who can hold you without falling apart. I'm not my appa, I say to the face with a new haircut. And the mirror remembers what forgiving him felt like, wrenching it out like an inch of glass, him free, and I too, no more wondering what I could have done to hide the soju and the rum or keep my mother's jaws from his fists. But here he is in the mirror, looking like the picture of him in '89 at the ocean. And it's the only one of us together smiling. And the only task left is to remember I got from him what I needed. Thank you all so much. I think we were gonna chat a little and question and answer a little, but I'm realizing that our effusive love and appreciation, it takes up space and time, thank goodness. So we are a little over. John B., what do you say?
Please chat. If you'd like to. I want you all to have space, because I realize too this space is also like a hangout space as much as it is an event space. So I don't want everyone to just have to say goodbye. So if you want to, talk a bit, please do. I'm hanging out.
Can we give it up again for Autumn, please? I know we're a small group, but we're a mighty group.
Thanks, y'all.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
Poems! Oh my God! Woo!
Oh, man.
Go ahead.
No, go.
Just talk
I
about
have a question. We talked about beforehand framing a small Q&A where it was just like what questions bubbled up via the reading. And I've never thought of this specific question, but I'm thinking a lot of Adam's last poem. And just that small tweak on a game and what it is when thinking about change. Sometimes we think about it in ways that are so deeply structural that it's like everything needs to change. And sometimes that flood, at least for me, prevents my pinpointing on, what's one thing you could change? What's one? And I'm curious if we were to it's hard to just narrow it, right? But if you were just thinking about the world that the literary world that you exist in, either your relationship to poems, your relationship to readings, the poem's relationship to community, I don't know, any number of things. I'm curious what's one thing that you might want to be different in the literary world, or just one specific thing.
Always done with your questions.
I might have stumped you, but I don't know. It just got me thinking what other small things could change? If Adam can change this small game, what are small changes?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is you know, I was chatting with John beforehand, like, yo, I really want to ask Rachel Eliza, but like, that's a big freaking ask. Like, Rachel Eliza is a big deal. Like, I don't know, like, if that would be kosher. And I think just like the kindness and generosity in which you responded to my email and reached back out, like, I appreciate the poetry world in that it doesn't have a lot of hierarchy, but there still is that hierarchy and those closed doors. And like, you know, we have our pedestal of revered poetry gods. And I mean, an amazing change would just be if there was like more ease of communication and connection between, you know, the poets who are just like coming up like myself and, you know, the people who I really think to be my mentors and my guiding lights. Because that is so nerve-wracking to like reach out to people. Like, so you just published your 4th book, like, you know, like, would you come read with me? And yeah, just like where could a world shift with like more generosity imbued into different facets of the way we organize and, you know, and gather in spaces would be my answer to a very hard and deep and profound question.
I think for me, like one of the rituals of like the ritual or space of asking, like how the pendulum of asking, it creates so many ripples of either anxiety or where am I in this vertical way? Mm-hmm. And it really, the circular way or even like, I first was thinking abolish blurbs, first of all. Fuck a blurb all day.
To abolish blurb requests.
Again, it's like the space of the person being asked and then the person asking. And we know the value or the weight of the ask and then the weight of the person being asked. I wish that could be altered in some way that opens up into a different kind of space of what it means to ask for help. Or, you know, one of my things and like, you know, letters of recommendation, I have to ask friends or people older than me for them. And a lot of times it makes me so anxious. I won't even fill out things because I just can't bear to ask someone to do this. Yeah. Even now, I would say, like, it's just, it really is challenging. There's also just this kind of, even the way that the letters happen, where if you waive the right to, like, if I go to the doctor, I don't waive the right to see my medical files or like my shit. Like, I want to see all my information. So there's even this kind of like veiling that happens that is like, it's kind of not organic to how we are. And then it just sets up like a secret.
Yeah. And
so it's like, those are some things, John asking these fancy, complicated, complex questions, like, but immediate, I was like, wow, you know, there are definitely things, those feel very like specific, but the way, I mean, even for seeing the body, like, I was like, oh, this is my 5th book and I have to ask people for blurbs. And I really was just like, I'm not doing that. And then finally I was like, I got to do it. I mean, it was like, even before the book was finished, I was like, can I just be like old enough now where they're not going to ask me to do this? And then it was like trying, and then it's like a weird thing, like to ask your friends. It's just a weird thing into the space of the ask. And then it's like, you know, what is the service or the intention of the asking in relationship to the person who, like, is there a space where the person who is even being asked to do something and the person asking, like, they metabolize or come together in a way where it's like inseparable. It's not like, can you, like, the favor or whatever. I also sometimes too think this word, like, I don't know. I mean, right now, even like, I don't even want like the MFA workshop to be in a classroom anymore, or like a circle table. I'm even over the circle table, actually. Miss me with the circle table if it's not going to really be a circle. So there's just all these ways, I think, in small ways, as Jon mentioned, and also Adam's gorgeous poem, where it's like those kinds of visual things or like those really specific things can add up where they start to affect you in ways that you may not even be conscious of when you come into physical spaces, even virtual spaces. Like, you know, if someone asks me something, I'll tell them, but at the same time, it's like, I think like, well, if this can help someone. And I wasn't always like that. Before I would just take blow after blow and I would just be like, just be quiet and keep going. Like, don't let that define your story. That's that person's thing. It's not even about you. That actually probably has so little to do with you because you're so small in that person's perceptions anyway. Try to keep going. And then other times I would get done in different kinds of ways. I was like, I'm not even going to write anymore. I would just be like, I need to go call my therapist. I don't even know what's going on. So I don't want to ramble too much and like change the energy, but that's the kind of, you know, thing. Whereas I have a real kind of informed thing of how I move in the world, and it's constant, it's fluid and it changes all the time. But it's just like, don't do people that way. Don't be an asshole. Like, just don't help people.
Yeah.
It feels really great. And it's actually even not about me. Like most of the time I'm like, that person's doing something bigger. It's not about, it's like, just, you could do that. Well, why would you choose not to when you could? You know, like energy. And I really know more and more as I get older, some people are not like that.
Totally.
So fearful, and it's very vertical and very narrow. And again, no judgment either. I don't know what's informed their experiences of how they came to be that way. But people need to be rescued in poetry land. And some rescue operations.
Say that shit. Say that shit.
Rescue. Sometimes it's mission impossible. We need some more.
Say that shit.
I don't know.
When we all hang out in the living room, I start giving up the stories, but not on the recording.
Right there. We got to rescue people.
We're going to tell Jon at Literati. We're going to
I know.
edit, Jon.
I do think, I don't know if this is like, well, I don't even know if it's like piggybacking on it, but I do think there's something in the poetry world, not in every poetry world. You can't even say the poetry world. There are so many poetry worlds, but a common thread throughout many poetry worlds feels so much more poet-centric than reader-centric or audience-centric, and not like the work in the books. Like, there are such vital, important, earth-shifting books right now, but I oftentimes think of the workshop or I think of the reading as these spaces where like the smallest amount of intentionality about how, like, who is going to be listening and how they're going to be listening feels as though sometimes it's like literally not even thought of. And so oftentimes you'll have events that start, or I don't know, like it kills me when people introduce people and they literally haven't thought a smidge about what they're going to say or something like that. And so they're like,
or didn't read the bio that they got ahead of time anyway.
or just, I don't know, like I always, every time I go into a literary space, I'm like, I mean, you could play music right now, or you could, you know, just like think of what a mood is and how one might set it in a way that feels welcoming, because the opposite of that is insular.
Yeah.
And I'm really like, my life feels right now like just so informed by the truly like tectonic plate shifting work that's happening in contemporary American poetry right now. And sometimes I feel like our ability to move those mountains is so clear, and our ability to build one bridge between the public and those mountains can sometimes feel like it's wanting. And like how to, as my MFA professor, Ted Thompson, I never actually had him, but I heard him say it at a dinner party. He said that you have to sweep the steps of the church if you want God to enter. And that always stayed with me.
I kind of like the idea of, maybe this is exactly what each of you are saying and then maybe stated differently, but like, my fear about our beloved poetry communities, plural, is that in our like commitment to rigidity, right? whether that be the like structure of the MFA program or the like brush fire that is higher education right now in the world, right? We just like blindly commit to things because that is how they were initially monetized and allowed poets to earn capital in the world. So therefore, that's how this shit must function in perpetuity, right? When we commit to that, it's a kind of like, and this is not a poetry observation in so much as it is sort of like a life one too. I wish for poetry what I wish for all writing communities and all creative communities, and that is that there is more celebration of process and becoming, as opposed to the rightness and the product-driven orientation of art, right? Like I know the things that in my own life have really formed me and made me be curious about the arts and culture more generally, right? I'm talking about bigger issues that have nothing to do with poetry, but it's like a portal, it's a lens, it's a way of seeing. And part of that is because of the legacies of instructors and mentors that have come into my life and kind of disrupted me from these rigid systems, right? They're the ones who told me, actually, this is trash, don't do this, is not how to do it. The world is much, much bigger if you allow yourself to sort of step back and look horizontally at who's around you and who you can play next to, as opposed to just like barreling ahead. So I think that's why I'm drawn to like open mic spaces. It's why I found myself in an oral tradition. It's why I love the idea of becoming in our work. And I think that that's a thing that I would love to see like celebrated or prioritized more. This process of like, not necessarily production and how we produce, but like how we can be transparent about how we are growing and evolving through the art we make. Because I think when we don't do that, we just play ourselves small as fuck. Poets are small, right? Like we are among the more brilliant and potent minds in the world thinking today. Our poems should be on literal subways and they should be painted on the sides of airport terminals. And in some cases they are. But I think when we commit to like this rigid way of understanding how poetry will allow capital to come into my life, we play ourselves smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, even as we may be getting like more and more and more access within the poetry universe, right? So I'm super inspired by poets that are just like thinking, you know, not 30 degrees radius, but like 180.
It's also partly because of the poems that are on subways, even by poets who we love, with poems that we love. It's always like an excerpt of the most nature part of their writing. Like it's never like, oh man, this is the stakes poem, right? Like they're never, that's never the poem. And so the greater public can go and be like, oh yeah, I love poems. That's the like word salad of nature that I sit by on the subway sometimes, right? And you're like, no, that's not it, that's not it.
Word salad of nature. If y'all take nothing else from this reading, please take that.
And buy Arm's book.
Everybody's books. Oh man. Well, I feel like we could be here all night chatting. I would love to be here all night. And when we can hang out in people's actual living rooms again, it's going to be such a joy. Please let me cook you all dinner as a thank you when we're all doing that again. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. It's great to see your names and icons. And Jordan, thank you for that sneak peek of Sloan. You know, we've been wondering how she's doing. Thank you, Jon, again for hosting us. We really appreciate you and the show. And of course, thank you to everybody. Your words are always a guide and a light and a compass for me. And it's just amazing to, connect with you and share the space. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for just a really beautiful reading and for all the work you do and will continue to do. We appreciate it so much. Take care, everybody. We'll see you at the store soon.
Appreciate you, Jon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.